with an experience in Python and Java programming. So I'll be your trainer to understand what we are for and what is Python and how it will be actually implemented in real-time scenarios. Okay. And before we move on to the actual session, I would like you guys also to introduce what you've been doing and how much knowledge you have on any other programming language or within the Python. So who wants to go first? Let's be in the alphabetical order. Jyoti Ankarao. Can you briefly introduce yourself, both of you? You guys, am I audible for you? Jyoti or Manish? Anyone
No.
can go ahead.
Hi sir, this is Manish.
Okay.
I am from Nellore. I have completed MCA.
Okay, so Manish, you have an idea about what a programming language and any other languages, programming languages you have been trained with?
Uh, I have touch of Java.
Okay. And what about Python?
No sir.
Okay, fine. How about you, Jyoti? Okay, you don't want to introduce yourself.
Hi,
Uh,
sir. Good morning. My name
Morning.
is Jyoti.
Yep.
I am pursuing degree final year.
Okay.
I am from Naushapet.
Okay. Any idea into you are pursuing degree in the sense like any idea into the technology like programming languages or anything? Okay, let me get into the actuals. Okay. Fine. So for any programming language, the main purpose of any of the language is that we develop a piece of software. Okay, that piece of software can be anything ranging from your mobile application or a web application. Web application in the sense whatever you see on the browser. It's all based on the browser. Okay, and a few more applications which you'll be having with your desktop applications. You call them as a desktop applications. Okay, all these have a GUI. So both the web applications and your desktop applications or your mobile applications, whatever may be, will be having a GUI, which you call as a graphical user interface, which is a main source for the user or the end customer to interact with the application. OK, and what goes inside is everything in terms of the request and response. So you can classify that as in different terms depending upon your range of applications. OK, so it can be like if you're interacting with your web application, you will be interacting with the browser request. Yeah. If you have any questions, we can we can add it at the end of the session. OK. Okay. So if you guys have any idea about what are all the different programming languages we have like Java, which is a wide range of people are using it, and it's the most extensively taught in the academic and everything. So apart from the Java, we have like PHP, C, C++, and other major languages. Along with that, we have a Python. So we have a different languages for different purposes, like some will be using for functional programming, some for the procedural, and some for the scripting, which is used like JavaScript, jQuery, all such uh, languages. OK, so coming to the Python, which is our major subject over here. So Python was first introduced in 1991. By then it didn't gain any much popularity because earlier it was used in the scientific research and by by scientists to perform some of the his scientist research and all. So the basic version of the Python which was released, the first version was 9.0. Okay, this was released prior to Java, but Java was very fast packed and fast moved, but then the Python was increased and it really gained its significance in terms of the 2000s and 2008. Okay, that is when the actual market came in for the machine learning or the data analysis, where you want to process the large and huge amount of data. Okay, that's when it gained the popularity. So if I ask you, like, have you gone through like wherever the Python is being introduced, what you will say? You'll be directly telling like my machine learning or processing data. That is where it was being performance oriented and it was a popular role in that field. Okay, in that terms, we have like the other versions have been increased and its performance has been increased and its use has been significantly increased with respect to the web applications. And the one drawback for the Python is that it's not much more used in the mobile applications. The reason is that we have a microservices or a web services in place which can be used to be dependent in the Python, but the actual applications to be developed in the mobile applications range in the native SDK or cross-platform, which here doesn't support much with the Python. Okay, so the earlier version, which was released in 1991, and later it got into the development with respect to the other languages, and it got improved itself, like Python 3. So you have a different versions of Python, which are majorly like Python 2 and Python 3. Python 2 is the first version which was launched for a specific use cases like scientific development and all. So it got the changes and later it got released into Python 3, which came into the larger market of the web market as well. OK. So any questions here? Fine. So that's the history of the Python. And what is a Python in general means? Python is like a general purpose language which you can use in wide range of applications in order to process your text, which is used in data analysis, machine learning, all these, and analyze those data. And you can also do the image processing also, where in real time you can have a webcam or a CC cam, and then you can identify the images like how the person is moving, how an object, particularly in general, how an object is moving or how an object is performing. OK, apart from that, you can also do a game development, and you can even do a web scraping, which means like basically pulling all the images or all the data from a website, and then you use it for your data analysis. OK, and you can also build a web services. You can also build web applications as such. Okay. And it's apart from for all these, in order to support, you will be not having the same libraries or same tools for all the purposes. It will be distinguished into different libraries or modules, where each module will be supporting for the whatever the required uh, required domain or whichever application you want to build. OK, so you can say that apart from the Python core Python, you have all these libraries are packed into a different libraries. So you just import them through your installations like pip install and then add it to your virtual environments, which I'll be taking you in a brief at the later point of view. So you can use those libraries. OK, so it has since this is a open source, it has like so many open source people who have been contributing like third-party libraries, which develops into the use cases which are required in regular basis. OK, so and OK, this is fine. What is all Python is going to be doing and where you are going to use a Python. But why we need to use a Python? That's the question. Like we have so many languages and we need to use a Python for this. Why we are gonna use that? OK, and you can think like we have a C or C++, which majorly focuses on the system level design or embedded level of programming. OK, so in terms of Python, we have like we can use that it's the easy way of learning a Python. The syntax is simple and is easily understandable by any person who is not into a programming background, and you use it for a wide variety of applications. Since the syntax is simple, you have a large number of libraries to support, and each development of application doesn't have the overload of your libraries to be within the application. It follows the object oriented and different functional paradigms in order to write your application. Forget like object oriented in the sense of what are objects and or which will be coming at a later point. So it follows all the programming paradigms which are actually used. OK, and this is mostly used in the these are only the few examples where it is used. It's extensively used at NASA, Netflix, Uber, and Google. Google and all these uses with a wide variety of other programming languages also, like Go language. They use their own dependent libraries, and you can see like Instagram and other things also depend on the Python, and they use on the Python. Okay, so how it actually works. So any programming language you are writing will be having a source code as part of the file. So that is in your understandable language, where a programmer writes his program following a syntax rules which are specified by the language. OK, these are all the syntax rules and guidelines which will be appearing in your guidelines, for which the Python is having like a PEP guidelines. So you have to follow those guidelines. So what basically your program is consisting of? Your program is consisting of your variables, which are again called as the data types, which hold the data, and the functions or methods, all these wrapped up into a classes. So basically a program is nothing but a class of functions, variables, methods, and all these. OK, so this is all written in a format where a human is readable and he understands how to write the program following the guidelines from the PEP guidelines. OK, so the internally what you have the Python interpreter or Python virtual machine, which loads this, and it initializes the interpreter, which again loads these coding, and then it will convert this into an executable code or a byte code, which is basically nothing but a zeros and ones. OK, so you can uh, you can figure out that we don't have a compiler here as do we have for a Java or other programmers. There are different ways to run and execute your program. You have a different way in Python, and you have a different way in Java. You have a different way with PHP or as such. So in Python, it's by line interpretation. OK, so what it does is whatever the code you are taking, the interpreter simply loads it and it converts that into a byte code using the PVM. OK, and then it will provide you the result. There is again a lot more how it does with respect to the interpreter and how it goes internally, the Python execution and all. OK, so any of you have any doubts still here? Fine. Okay. So when we talked about Python as a general purpose language, what does it mean by a general purpose language? OK, so we have a specific languages to do for a specific domain or a specific application development. OK, so but as a Python, it is why used in using for a different applications and different tasks. Suppose you take like you have mobile application development. OK, and some of the languages, or you see like JavaScript, which is only targeted to be used in the web framework or like a front end of the web framework. And you have few more languages which can be used for only the game development. And you have like these native SDK developments like iOS with Swift and Android, which are specifically used only for the mobile application development. So when we talk about a general purpose, it is used in wide range of applications. It can be used for web processing, data analysis, and your game development. Everything can be done with this Python. OK, we have a certain limitations in the mobile applications, but that can be used by supporting as the REST services which can be used in the mobile application. So the front end of the mobile application will be the Android or Swift, but the actual data manipulations happens with your web services. OK, this can be with respect to Python or Java or any other languages which is supporting with the request framework. OK, so any programming languages should be supporting with a strong features of like what is meant to be called as a programming language. OK, so when it comes with the Python, it has a lot of features like dynamically typed, and we already talked about what is an interpreted, right? And it is also like embeddable. OK, and it's like multi-paradigm. We talked about this also, like multi-paradigm when we support with different programming paradigms. OK, and it is also extensible, and we have a large open source standard library in order to support different functionalities as per our requirements. OK, so what does it mean by dynamically typed? So suppose think that you are declaring a data type. OK, suppose how will you declare a data type if it is for a number or an integer? You have to declare it like int. You have to declare it as int and variable name. OK, this is how you do it in other languages. Say like it can be of Java or C or any other. OK, but the same thing goes as in your Python. You can declare it as a and assign it as something null. OK, and at a later point of your programming, you can assign this as a equal to 1. OK, and at later point, you can also declare this as a equal to text. That implies the data type which the variable is holding is determined at the runtime. That implies at the runtime. That means when your program is running at a multiple point of time, your variable is holding different types of data. OK, so it can hold a number data type or an integer data type. It can hold a text or a character type. It can further hold a float or any other data type. OK, this can also be a dictionary also. You can even specify it as a dictionary or any other data holding data types. OK, so that implies that it's not required for you to determine what type of data the variable or a function which is holding with respect to the your program. OK, this is again he's having a downside about how it's being a dynamically typed, because the compiler doesn't know what type of data it is holding and how it is holding. Only when the actual object is being stored in that variable, then it determines what type of data it is holding. OK, and you have a interpreted. As we said, like Python is an interpreted, which means that it executes its code line by line, and it is then being compiled into a machine code. OK, this actually the interpreter makes it easier for writing and testing your code, so that you have a different apart from writing suppose if you want to perform like a plus b or something and find out what it is holding into the object, you don't need to write a complete entire program. You can just go into your Python console, and then you can write whatever the instructions which you want to perform, and then hold that object in the memory, and then you can find out the result. OK, and embeddable means which can be easily integrated into the other applications, or say suppose if you are using API which has been written in another language, you can also use your Python code in that particular language. You can embed your Python code into other languages. This happens mostly with respect to the OS dependent applications, where you have certain functionality on the OS, like you have developed a .exe file which is a desktop application, right? And you are using certain OS capabilities and OS required functionalities. And some of the functionalities you can write it in your C or Java, anything, and some of the functionalities which you can write it in your Python code and wrap your Python code on top of the main application, which is built on some other language like any other language, Java or any other thing, and you can use your Python code also within that. So it provides an ease to, because since the Python core supported language is a C. Okay, so all the modules which are developed in Python will rely on the C language. So it provides a way to wrap your Python code into different applications which are running on different languages. Okay, and when we talk about the next future like multi-paradigm, these programming paradigms is nothing but the approach on how you write your source code in the any programming language. Okay, so when we have a different programming paradigms like object-oriented, procedural, imperative and functional programming. Okay, so what does it mean by object oriented? As we all know, we have a classes and objects which to determine our functionality. Say like you want to move your car, you define your car class, and then you have its variables like wheel, steering and all, and you define your functions like move, stop, or brake and accelerate. All these are called the functional. So you determine your programming way in such a way like object oriented way. And what is the procedural way is that you have a list series uh, of functions which execute or which perform its uh, programming in such a way that a series of steps are executed. Like you have one function to be performed first and the other function to be performed second as such. Okay. And what does imperative meaning? Imperative is functional programming normally comes with when you are using these scripting languages like JavaScript or all these TypeScript or any of the languages. So that implies you are depending upon your browser where you can debug or where you can pull your code in such a way with imperative style where each function will be having a synchronous call and it connects like a chaining of programming. And the functional programming is also similar to a procedure for programming where you write functions wrapped over your functionality within a functions, and then you use at a later point of time. We can provide it like a dependent libraries as such. Okay, if any of you guys have any questions till now, you can just pop it up. Okay. And when we say it like extensible, so for any open source language, we have a wide range of support in terms of libraries which can be used for a wide variety of functionalities. Okay, so similarly, Python is also having a large number of and a huge number of modules to support different functionalities. You can't expect like it is limited for a particular thing, and for performing the same functionality or same use case, you might be having a multiple libraries also, and you need to figure out like which library suits for your application or your use case scenario, and you can use that one. Okay, and apart from the existing libraries, as a developer, you can also create your own libraries and you can embed them into your application, which can either be a private or a public for which can be like private in the sense which it is only limited to your enterprise or applications which you are building. And if it is like public, you can host it on your Python standard library also, where you can provide a way of helping others in terms of using that for their wide range of use cases scenarios. Okay, and this again builds into like a large standard library where you have built-in modules to perform different tasks or commonly available tasks for any of the use cases. Okay, and we talked about like what are all its uses and how the Python is like a different from other languages. Okay, so every language will have an advantage over the other language, and in the meantime, it will be having its own disadvantages or its limitations. Okay, so some of the limitations for Python is it's very much slower and than the already popular languages like C or Java, because we are interpreting it by line. So having a huge file and then compiling it running takes less time, when compared to the line by line interpretation takes a more time. So when it is doing an line by line interpretation, your execution also becomes a little bit slow. Okay, but the processing of the Python is comparatively more than the other languages, but the execution or interpreting takes a more time. Okay. And we have a limitation on the memory utilization because the built-in library or the garbage collector which we have within the Python depends on the core libraries which are written in the C. So it is not much more optimized with respect to the memory because the user doesn't have the control in order to use or determine how the memory has to be processed. As we said before, like you'll be defining your data types at the runtime, which can hold multiple data types like integer or any string or any other data type. So it optimally reduces the memory, like the references are being referenced to different objects, and we don't have any control about how to manipulate these memory objects. So it's not much optimized in order to use the memory. Okay. And the other thing is it's not compiled until the runtime and it is dynamically typed. So we have a lot of problems which are only caught when the program is actually run. Okay, you can overcome this with your interpreter, with your IDEs which you're working on, which have the intellectual runtime or the highlighting of the errors before it. But the actual errors, since it's not compiled until we are able to execute it, it will be having a lot of problems like where the particular problem or error occurs. Okay, and it's more difficult to work with databases in Python than in some other applications. That's the reason, because uh, since Python is recently popular from 2008, when you compare to other languages, it's not like a very old language. So we have a repository kind of when we tell it as a difficult to work with the databases, in the sense like you can connect to the database, you can process your applications, and you can perform the CRUD operations. But the other languages which we compare with has a wide range of database support, like persistence database and all kinds of object relational mapping and all. So those libraries are still not in complete work, which we have one framework called Django framework, where we have such capabilities where you can work pretty much easily with terms of database. But that is also limited to only the relational databases and not to the NoSQL databases. Whereas the other languages provide you flexibility to work with relational NoSQL or text and column databases or whatever it might be, like time series or anything. So Python has having a little bit of limitations in working with different types of databases. Okay. And due to its architecture, like how the Python is built, the support for multi-threading is a limited. We have like multi-threading, and we have like multi-processing, which we will go in detail when we go into that particular aspect of multi-processing or multi-threading. Okay, so whereas when it comes with the multi-threading, it's basically multi-processing only, which is used as a separate process. So each thread will be running as a separate processes. When you assume that a thread is running as a separate process, that again denotes a limitation on your threading concepts, where you don't have the actual uh, uh, control on how your threads are processing. Okay. And when we talked about the evolution of a Python, so the Python initially it was with the Python 2.x and 3.8. So the initial versions of the Python were based on the 2.x. Okay, this was majorly used with the scientific research and other data manipulation areas, which was having a lot of limitation in order to be used with the number of applications which it has been used now. So what the main thing which we come across with Python and Python 2 versus Python 3 is both are same, but there is a lot of enhancements which we cannot go back and use a Python 2 or a Python 2 to the Python 3. So it was like a wide variety of changes have been done in terms of Python 3. The syntactical changes will not match with the previous version, and you cannot degrade your applications. So that is the reason it will be a lot of hectic in order to move your applications from Python 2 to Python 3. So some of the changes is like your code becomes much easier in Python 3 versions compared to 2 versions. Okay, and whereas in Python 2, a print is just a statement, whereas Python 3, a print is a function. What does it mean? Like print is a statement. It's like in Python 2, you used to write print this. So this is a statement. It doesn't have any function like this. OK, so this is a statement. And if you want to do like in a Python 3, it all becomes with the this is the function. OK, so again, we have here multiple attributes to be considered, which we can discuss at a later point of time. So this is wrapped in a function, and we have an declarative over here referenced with EF. These all falls in the EF strings, which are much more advanced versions of declaring your print statements, where it will carry on the variable name which is declared earlier. Okay, so you can name it as name equal to. So if you're specifying it with a F string, your name variable is going to reflect here if you have declared it at a previous point of time. OK, so this is how the change is happening. And apart from this, we also have the exceptions which are enclosed like in notations. And whereas in Python 3 version, you have it within the parentheses. OK, so exceptions are nothing but a try catch exceptions, where you use it to catch your program when it is in an abnormal situations, or when you have an anomaly situations or use cases. OK, and we have a iterators and list which use xrange and range in version 2, and in 3 it is changed with the range. That means xrange is an iterator object. When you're using an xrange in Python, this xrange you cannot use it in Python 3. You can only use it in Python 2. And iterators is nothing but it will generate you a given iterator object. What is an iterator object is that suppose you have a list of elements. Take like you have a list or a set or anything. You have a list of objects like 1, 2, 3. OK, or 4. And what does the iterator do is iterator will have the next pointer. It will not have the item. So when you're traversing from this is holded in the index 0, and this is in the index 1. This is in the index 2 and 3 as such. So the iterator will give you the index or the iterator object to traverse to the next element in the list. In the list or whatever data type it is holding. Data type in the sense like data collection, you can call it as. There's a multiple data collection. So the iterator, this xrange is the iterator object, which gives you the next pointer of the location of the other object. So when you're moving again, you need to use the range over there or traverse to the other object. Whereas in range gives you the value of the object, which is like 1, 2, or 3. So since you again have a memory consumption over here, since this is the actual iterator, so it consumes a less memory. And since your range is giving you all the objects within that, so this takes you the extra memory in order to process your functions. OK, so there are a couple of scenarios where you can utilize the functionality like xrange in order to use it when you don't need the actual object and you want to create the objects on the fly, like when your program is executed, that time you can use the xrange. When your use case is a normal use case, you can use the range. But when it came with the Python 3.x, both of these x range and range are wrapped into range variable, which has internally the same thing. OK, depending upon your processing, it will iterate and it will load the objects into the function. OK, this is one of the major change which you will be asked most of the time, like what are the differences between Python 2 and Python 3. OK, and you have the support for the Unicode. What is a Unicode? So we have a different languages, right? Like you have English, you have Spanish, you have different languages. So earlier version doesn't has the support for the Unicode. What is a Unicode? Is a specific code which will be assigned for each and every character in terms to decode that into byte code. OK, so previously it was ASCII code, which is limited to only the alphabets and some of the special strings. There was no way in order to interpret the other languages or a global characters we determine in different languages. So for that reason, the Unicode is being added. You have again different versions of Unicode which falls into UTF and all. OK, so that's Python 3 added the support for Unicode to support wide range of languages to be supported and used in real applications. OK, and apart from this, in Python, the divisional operator, whatever the division operator you are having, it performs in a different way with terms of Python 3. What suppose if you are doing a division for a 5 by 2. So what you'll be getting 5 by 2, you'll be getting something in a floating point. If even though 5 by 2 is having a floating point, it always gives it as 2 only. OK, and whereas it doesn't have the precision to give for the floating or any other or decimal point when it is performing the slash operand, which was like a major drawback in the Python 2. It rounded off to the lower base, but it has to be rounded to the based on the floating point. If it is more than 5, you round it for the upper value. If it is less than 5, you round it for the lower value. In the similar way, but in Python 3, if you are performing a division operator, it gives you an exact and precision point of floating point where it comes like 2.5, 2.34 something as such. OK, these are all the differences between Python 2 and Python 3. But in general, as of now, most of the developers or programmers are using Python 3 only. Python 2 is used in very old applications which has been developed or which are in use since 91 or before 2000. OK, and as we spoken, like Python can be used in wide variety of applications. OK, so we have like different types of tools. And when you think about a Python application to develop, there is like a slight difference about how you are installing and using your Python. OK, so as we spoke, like we use Python for different applications like web and or the machine learning, web scraping, all these things. So you have libraries which are suited for different applications. OK, so in that case, you don't have the extra headache to load your application with all the libraries which are required for your application. You can specify that with the installation file where you can call it as some requirements.txt or any other file, and you'll specify what are all the uh, libraries required specific for that application. OK, so in that case, it comes with the virtual environment. Virtual environment is nothing but your application use cases where you have like say you are developing this gaming application and you only require the Pygame. So you will only have these libraries in that virtual application. Let me put it as say like you have a web virtual environment and you have a game virtual environment and you have a web services environment. OK, so what you have here for the web, you might be using a Django. Okay. And here for the game, you'll be using Pygame or something. And for the web services, you'll be using Fast API or something. So these are all independent. If you're developing a web game, you don't need this to be having with this one also. So it's a segregated, it's a differentiated. So you have each and every virtual environment. So this all comes up when you are installing your Python. OK, so it has the flexibility to choose what libraries you can use. These are all the libraries will be again used with the pip install, which is also another module. OK, so these are all the virtual environments which determine the use case of your applications to hold only its dependent libraries or modules which are specific to your application. And you have whenever you come across a Python, you'll be hearing about the Jupyter notebooks. Jupyter notebooks is nothing but a web integrated application which takes in your data and it processes your data as with the Python interpreter. OK, so you can utilize this Jupyter notebook as your Python interpreter instead of going into your Python console. You can directly launch your Jupyter and then you can type in with your line by line instructions. OK, and you have the package manager which is called as a pip, which is used to install at a runtime about what are all the required libraries you need it. And most probably you can for the IDEs, it's not only dependent, right? You can use it on like VS Code, PyCharm, Sublime, or anything to build your application. You can also use your plain notepad or a text pad to write your Python program. OK, and version control is something where you'll be pushing all your code as in a source repository. So these are all tools which has to be remembered when you are working on any other programming language till here. This is only independent. These are independent dependent for the Python. These three and these two it falls for the all the programming languages. OK, so you have GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, and SVN, Tortoise SVN. All these are the version control systems where when multiple people are working on the same repository, you tend to have your version control system in order to pull the changes from them and then have your own patch of changes and then merge to the actual repository. OK, and you have a testing frameworks. Testing frameworks is this for we are now whatever the approach we are having in any of the companies that earlier it was that you write your application programming and then you test it on the actual scenarios. Like if it's a web application, you test it on the web application, like if it is performing the processed request and actual response. OK, but now the picture came into like test driven approach where you need to write your test cases and evaluate like your function or a method which you are written for a specific purpose will be serving for the same purpose. Forget about the data, which the actual data, again, it comes with the mock data and actual data, the actual data which will be uh, which comes at the time of actual execution. And when you're writing any test cases or anything, you'll work on the mock data and expect the behavior or the functionality which has to be the performed by your function or a class or a function which you are writing. It again depends upon the multiple functions which your class is holding on. OK, this is all falls in when you are in the test driven approach. We call it as a test driven approach. Test driven development. OK, test driven development. Okay. This has become like a mandate to write your test cases on your own. It doesn't imply that a developer is a tester. Okay, but we are only doing a unit testing where a tester performs a wide variety of tests like automation testing, sanity testing, smoke test, and unit test, all those. But developers are focused to write only for the unit testing. So in order to write the unit testing, our programming language should also support the testing frameworks. These are only like a few of them which focus, which helps in you writing the test cases like PyTest, PyUnit, Behave as such. Okay, you have another other wide variety of testing frameworks also. Okay, and Python, when you listen about a machine learning, most of the time Python was used on the machine learning, apart from the frameworks like web and all. So the reason why Python has become a popularity is because of these modules, which are intended to use a large data manipulation and large variety of libraries which support with the actual data processing. Okay, so data in the sense it can be with CSVs, Excel files, or your any other PDF files, any sort of data in terms of it can be relatable to a particular functionality. Okay, these are all the wide variety of modules which are being used for data manipulation like NumPy, SciPy, Matplotlib, Pandas, and all this. And in conjunction, you can also use these along with your other frameworks also, like if you're processing with your web frameworks, you can also use it with the Django. So the web frameworks, in order to do web frameworks, define like how you are creating a web application. Okay, so you have a Django framework which embeds with the ORM facilities for the SQLite and relational database like MySQL as such, and it has an integrated server also. We host it on the Uvicon. Uvicon is the application server on which the Python applications are hosted. Okay, like how we have a Tomcat, JBoss for Java related, you'll be using the Uvicon. Okay. So the web frameworks comes with Django, Flask, Bottle, and Falcon, but the most famous which will be using with the Flask and Django. Again, the Flask will be used both for web as well as microservices framework, and Django can also be used for web development as well as REST services development. And you have image processing. You might come across like people scanning you through the CC cameras and all. So whatever the image which has been captured in the CC cameras, it can be again processed with the help of OpenCV and Mahatos libraries, where you can determine the movement of that particular object, how it is behaving, whether if someone is moving in front of the camera, and you can determine its functionalities and alert, create some sort of notifications and integrate that with the IoT devices as well. And you can also develop the gaming applications, but these are not that much popular in terms of gaming. But you have libraries which support the gaming development like Pygame and Arcade. Okay, and you have a couple of more other frameworks in order for used for web scraping. Web scraping is mostly used for the data analysis, where you need to pull in the entire. Suppose you are having a large some content delivery websites. Okay, and you want the data of that content delivery and process on your own. Such time you'll be using the web scraping, where you pull all the data from the website, not the functionality, but the actual data which they are exposing. Okay, and you process on that data from the website. Okay, so these are all the use cases and everything. And okay, so yeah, so if you guys have any doubts, you can just have a question. Aparadi, you are speaking something, I cannot hear you. If you have any question, or else if your audio is not properly, you can just type it in the chat also. So where was the guy? Anna? The first people who were he left it. Okay, I think I got introduction from the Jyoti, and the rest of you guys I didn't get. So if you could brief me about yourself, what you've been learning, and how much experience or how much are your exposure with programming language like Java or Python or any other thing. Yeah. Any doubts, guys? You need to speak up. Okay, go ahead with your introduction. Venkat, Gayatri, who's it? Arundhati, and Ayappa Reddy.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Venkat.
Sir, I am Venkat Reddy and I am a fresher, sir. I am starting from the scratch and I am from different background like agriculture BSc.
Okay.
After that, I have done my MBA.
Okay. So did you Were you able to understand a little bit of how the programming is and what a Python after this?
No, sir, I'm starting from the scratch only.
Okay. So I didn't explain much about a Python in this class because I was in belief that most of you might be with a different backgrounds as how you are with agriculture and all. So the use cases, I've spoken about the use cases. OK, and what are its major advantages or differences, and what are the wide variety range of applications where your Python fits in, and how you're gonna create them, and what are all the required tools for that. OK. Yeah, Gayatri. If you're speaking on mute, you need to unmute. OK. Next, who is it? Arundhati?
Yes,
Arundhati. Yeah. OK.
sir, this is Arundhati from Guntur, and my background is electronics and communication engineering. I'm starting
Okay.
from this batch.
OK. Thank you, Arundhati. And Ayappa Reddy.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, am I audible? Hello.
You're not audible, Ayappa. Okay. Your mic is not good. It is picking a lot of noise. You can just type it in chat.
Yeah, okay.
So any questions you people are having or any clarifications you need, you can go ahead.
Sir, before join, sir, one doubt, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, Venkat.
Sir, before joining the course, I have gone through some of the videos about Python on YouTube, like data types, and in that I have come across certain like string, integer.
Yes. Yes.
I have gone through. For that, I have seen the examples of for that coding.
Okay.
So if we go down the line in the Python course, it will be like that only, or the difficulty level will be increasing.
See, difficulty level, if you term it as a difficulty level, see, like as a someone with the computers background, the difficulty level will be easy. OK. And if you come with the background level without any knowledge in the computers, I can say it as a medium for Python. OK, because any language, the string and everything which will be used for, you asked about, string is a data type which holds different characters or text. OK, and when you're holding a string, OK, what is the purpose you will be holding a string? You need to manipulate it and you need to process it for some other functionality. OK, so you have a different varieties of functions. What you'll do, you'll first hold the string which falls into the data type, which is of string data type. OK, and you have a specific functionalities on that string where you have like concatenation, and if your string is having a multiple characters where you need to uh, uh, take out few characters, and you have a string, you need to find out the length of the string. All these are functions which are defined on the string. OK, when you get used to these functions and data types, it will be like a easier only. Right. And any programming language in general, if you take the actual what you will call the difficulty level increases depending upon your application usage. OK, that means the use case on which your application is being developed, it will have a challenges on how you are processing your data, how you are manipulating with that. That part I can tell it as a challenging, but while learning it is simple only. OK, if you can understand how the what is a data type, I'll in the further coming up classes, we will discuss on what are all the strings, what functions it is having, and how we are going to use this function, this particular data types in different varieties of applications as such. OK, I have determined here like see, this is, I would said you like this one, right, where A is holding a multiple types of data, right?
So yeah,
So
unable to
this is
see.
also a string. Okay. So on this particular string, what are all the functions which you will be performing? You'll concatenate this for another string like say B. Okay. Or you'll be running
Not
a dot length or something which gives you the length of this particular string. Okay. And you'll use this particular string at another point of time in conjunction with another thing. That can be like you're sending it back as a response to your request, or if you're saving it in your database. Okay. And again, in terms, it can be again typecasted to, if it is like characters, you can typecast it to different data type as such. Okay. So is it clear on that?
yes, sir. Yes.
Any other questions, guys?
Sir, coming from the MBA background or Agri background, will we able to complete the course in the 60 days duration, or it will take time?
It again depends on your individual understanding capability. Okay. See, for you, your focus or mindset, if you're not for a computers, the first thing is that you leave your fear. Like I am from a different background and I don't know how the computer, you don't need not know to how the actual computer works. You just need to know how to write a program and how our program will be used in order to perform an use case scenario in actual work environment. That's enough. Okay. And in terms of program, I can show you a particular programming if I'm. Okay. This is some of the code which we write internally, right?
Sir,
So
I'm
these are
able
all
to-
like, you're not able to see. Let me show it.
you didn't change the screen. Sir.
Yeah. Okay. So this is how you'll be writing a program. Let me show it for a simple one. Okay. You can take it as this, right? So this is a function, a small function which gives you like what has to be done. What is this is having if a function declaration which doesn't have any parameters, and you have a variable with another function which it fetches, and you have an array list, and you have an if condition which is being processed with some lambda expressions, which again has a for loop based on the collection which it is holding, and you perform some other values on that. These are all again the data types, and you return a value. Since you are having an if condition, if you will be having, if required, you'll be having an else condition, and everything is wrapped up inside of your exception block, which is try except. Okay. So this is how a program, when you try to read it, you'll be easily understanding what what is your program and how it is being performed. Okay. Got it?
Yes, sir.
So,
Yes.
so if you say it like, if you're coming from it, see, you might know that most of the people with no computer background are being like excelled in computer science or any other thing with respect to different technologies in software industry. Okay, some of them will be like a tester, some of them will be a good programmer, some into hosting, some into cloud or such. Okay, it all depends upon your capability of understanding language and making it to put into use. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. If you guys have any other question, you can shoot or you can stop it. No questions for Arundhati, Ayappa, and Jyoti or Gayatri?
No, sir.
Okay, it's clear with what I explained in terms of Python and its use cases. or its version differences and how it evolved as such, right?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Yeah. Have a good day.